You're listening to When the Lies Began. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're peeling back the layers on a case that started as, well, what looked like a horribly tragic home invasion in a peaceful neighborhood. But what unfolded was something far darker, far more calculated. We're talking about the Jennifer Pan case.
Exactly. It's a story about a staged robbery, murder for hire, really, all born from this incredibly tangled web of lies that spanned well over a decade.
It happened in Markham, Ontario, November 8th, 2010, a date that shattered a family.
And our mission today in this deep dive is to trace that path. How does someone go from, forging report cards to orchestrating the murder of their own parents? We need to connect those dots.
To even begin to understand the crime, you have to understand the context. The Pan family, Huei Hann Pan and Bich Ha Pan.
Right. They were, by all accounts, the picture of the Canadian immigrant dream. Ethnic Chinese refugees that came from Vietnam and just worked relentlessly.
Really built a life from scratch.
Absolutely. Han Pan, he was a tool and die maker, requires real precision, And Bich Ha, she worked at Magna International, making car parts. Just solid, diligent work.
And it paid off, visibly at least. By the mid-2000s, 2004 specifically, they had the big house on a quiet street, nice cars, a Mercedes, a Lexus.
Yeah, and savings, too. Around $200,000, they'd achieved that stability, that financial security they'd aimed for.
So outwardly, everything looked perfect. Successful, stable, quiet.
But that outward image, as we now know, it was a facade. Inside that comfortable house, the psychological atmosphere was, it was described as a pressure cooker.
Intense expectation.
Unbelievably intense. And you really can't understand the eventual violence without understanding that constant simmering pressure. It's the essential backdrop.
And then, that pressure cooker exploded. On November 8th, 2010, that quiet suburban street became a crime scene.
And the story that first emerged was exactly what the perpetrators wanted people to believe, a random violent robbery.
Jennifer Pan, she was 24 at the time. She's the one who made the 911 call, isn't she?
She is. A frantic call. Her story was that 3 armed men burst in demanding money. It immediately cast her as a victim, the terrified daughter who survived.
And her account was quite specific, wasn't it? About what happened to her.
Very specific. She claimed they tied her hands behind her back and secured her to the banister upstairs with shoelaces, apparently very tightly.
Okay.
And then, she said, her parents were forced downstairs into the basement.
The outcome was just horrific.
Absolutely devastating. Bich Ha Pan, her mother, was shot multiple times and died right there at the scene.
And her father.
Huei Hann Pan was shot, too, in the head and face. Miraculously, incredibly, he survived, but he was critically injured. Rushed to the hospital, placed in a medically induced coma.
So in those first chaotic hours, Jennifer is the only conscious witness, the traumatized survivor of this brutal attack.
That's the picture.
And that's where the shock begins for everyone involved, for the police, for the community, and for you, the listener.
Yeah.
But this case, it pivots sharply.
It really does.
We move from that initial horror of a random act to the cold, hard realization of betrayal. So before we dig into the inconsistencies of the crime scene itself, we have to rewind. We need to understand the decade of lies that built up to this.
Because the crime wasn't the start, it was the culmination, the endpoint of years and years of deception.
Okay, so let's go back. Jennifer's childhood. The term that keeps coming up is tiger parenting.
Yes, and it seems fitting here, maybe even an understatement. It wasn't just about encouragement, it was about mandated perfection.
Her early life was incredibly structured, right? Piano, figure skating.
Very much so. Piano lessons from age 4, figure skating that became highly competitive. The dream, or perhaps the parents' dream for her, was maybe even the Olympics.
And the father, Han Pan, he's described as the driving force.
Yeah, the sources call him the classic tiger dad, even using the word tyrannical to describe his expectations. Bich Ha, the mother, is painted more as a reluctant accomplice, someone who went along with his demands.
And this control wasn't just academic or extracurricular. It extended to her entire social life.
Completely. Dances, parties, sleepovers, absolutely forbidden. Dating. Out of the question until after university graduation.
Wow.
Anything seen as a distraction from achievement was basically banned. Think about this. By age 22, Jennifer Pan had never been to a nightclub, never really been drunk, never taken a vacation without her family.
That level of isolation, of control, it sets the stage for any kind of failure to feel absolutely world-ending.
And a significant failure or setback did come early on. It was a turning point.
The figure skating injury.
Exactly. Around 8th grade, she tore a ligament in her knee. And just like that, the Olympic dream or even a serious competitive career was over.
That must have been devastating for a kid whose identity was so wrapped up in that.
It seems it was. Sources say the psychological blow was immense. This is reportedly when she began self-harming, cutting her arms, a sign of that internal pressure becoming unbearable.
So the athletic dream dies, and the focus shifts entirely to academics, where the pressure just ramps up.
It does, and she started struggling. In grade 9, her grades weren't terrible, maybe 70s, low 80s in some subjects outside of music, but in that household.
70s weren't good enough.
Not even close. 70% was basically failure in her father's eyes. So rather than face that disappointment, that potential rage, she started faking it.
This is where the forgery begins.
Yes, and quite meticulously, apparently. Using scissors, glue, a photocopier, she started altering her report cards, changing those 70s and 80s into straight A's.
Did she rationalize this? Like, how did she justify it to herself?
Well, the thinking seems to have been that these early high school grades didn't really count for university admission, so it wasn't that serious a lie. It was a way to manage the immediate pressure.
A dangerous precedent, though.
Hugely dangerous, because it worked, temporarily. And around the same time, grade 11, 2003, she met Daniel Wong.
The forbidden boyfriend.
The forbidden boyfriend. Initially just friends, but it became romantic, especially after he apparently helped her during a severe asthma attack on a school trip to Europe. She later said, "He pretty much saved my life." That creates a bond.
But Daniel wasn't the type of boy her parents would ever approve of, right?
Not at all. He was described as kind of goofy, outgoing, but crucially, police knew him as a local pot dealer. Low-level stuff, but still completely unacceptable to the pants.
So that relationship had to be entirely secret. Another layer of deception.
Another huge layer. And this all leads up to the biggest lie of all, the one that set the stage for everything.
University.
University. It all came down to one course. Grade 12 calculus. She failed it.
Which meant
she didn't actually have the credits to graduate high school. Ryerson University had given her early acceptance, conditional on graduation. So they rescinded the offer.
So no high school diploma, no university acceptance. This is the moment of truth.
It should have been. Facing her father now, admitting not just poor grades, but outright failure to graduate. The sources say he would have been apoplectic.
So instead of confessing,
she doubled down. She built the biggest lie yet. She told her parents she was starting at Ryerson in the fall of 2004.
And they bought it.
Her father was apparently delighted. He still held on to this dream of her eventually transferring to the University of Toronto into their prestigious pharmacology program. He was so pleased he bought her a laptop.
Oh, wow. So his positive reaction almost reinforced the lie.
It seems like it fueled it. But then comes the question, how do you possibly maintain the illusion of being a full-time university student for 4 years?
The logistics seem impossible.
The effort involved is just staggering. She pretended to go to Frosh Week. She'd leave the house every day with textbooks, notebooks.
Where'd she go?
Public libraries, coffee shops, sometimes just sitting in parks. She filled notebooks with fake lecture notes. She bought used physics and biology textbooks to leave around the house.
Did she fake financial aid too?
Yep. Forged documents claiming she got a student loan, even a $3,000 scholarship. When it came time for graduation, she invented reasons why her parents couldn't attend the ceremony. Not enough tickets, apparently. Then she claimed she had to defer.
It's like a full-time job just maintaining the lie.
It absolutely was, and it didn't stop there. After graduating, she transitioned the lie into a career. She claimed she was volunteering and then later working at the hospital for sick children in Toronto. She'd talk about shifts, colleagues, a complete fabrication.
Did she have any fake documents for this part?
She did. Police later found a fake university transcript someone had created for her. It speaks to the depth of this deception. It wasn't just words. It involved props, documents, a whole performance.
The psychological toll must have been immense, living a double life like that, day in, day out.
Sources talk about her having a severely fractured sense of self. The Jennifer her parents saw had almost no connection to the reality of her life, this constant lying, this fear of discovery. It's exhausting just thinking about it.
But lies like that, especially on that scale, they rarely hold forever, do they?
No, eventually the cracks appear. And in Jennifer's case, the entire structure came crashing down.
The parents found out. When was this?
The exact date isn't clear from the sources we have, but sometime before the murder, they discovered the whole thing. The fake university, the fake job, the entire decade of lies.
And her father's reaction?
As predicted. Apoplectic. Utter fury. His first instinct was to throw her out of the house. Told her to leave, Never come back.
But she didn't leave.
No. Her mother, Bich Ha, intervened. She persuaded Han Pan to let Jennifer stay, but under incredibly strict new conditions.
This is where the house arrest phase begins.
Essentially, yes, no more freedom. Her cell phone and laptop were confiscated. She could only use them under supervision.
Right.
They started doing surprise checks on her messages. And crucially, she was forbidden, absolutely forbidden, from seeing Daniel Wong.
How did they enforce that?
Her father started checking the odometer on the family car, tracking her mileage to make sure she wasn't sneaking out to meet him.
That's medieval levels of control. After years of perceived independence, even if it was fake, that must have felt suffocating.
She described it exactly that way. On Facebook, around February 2009, she posted about living under house arrest. She felt trapped, humiliated.
Did she cut off contact with Daniel then?
No, she couldn't or wouldn't. She kept contacting him secretly, using an old phone late at night, texting when her parents were asleep. The secrecy continued.
It's like she couldn't stop the double life, even when the main lie was exposed.
There's another Facebook post from around that time that's quite revealing. She wrote something like, "No one person knows everything about me. I like being a mystery." It really highlights that fractured self,
Yeah.
torn between wanting their approval and meeting this secret life, this escape with Daniel.
So the situation is intolerable. She's under total surveillance, cut off from Daniel, the shame of her lies exposed. This is the breaking point, right?
This seems to be the critical juncture where desperation shifted into something much darker. The sources indicate this is when Jennifer and Daniel Wong actively started plotting to have her parents killed.
Both parents.
Both parents. The plan was murder for hire. The goal seemed twofold: freedom for Jennifer and access to the inheritance.
Which was substantial.
Estimate around $500,000 for her share. So you have this immediate conflict in understanding the motive, which became a huge part of the legal battle later on.
Right. Was it purely about the money? Instrumental greed? Or was it more emotional, this desperate need to escape the pressure, the shame, by eliminating the source?
The prosecution definitely pushed the greed angle. They argued it was a cold, calculated plan for financial gain to get the money and be free to be with Wong.
But there's a strong psychological argument too, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Considering the years of intense pressure, the tyrannical expectations, the constant fear, many analysts suggest a primary driver might have been psychological escape, erasing the source of that unbearable stress and failure. The money was perhaps the means to achieve that escape, but not the sole reason.
The escape was the engine, the money was the fuel.
That's a good way to put it. And Daniel Wong, with his connections, became the facilitator.
He found the hitman.
He connected Jennifer with a man named Lenford Crawford, known as Homeboy. Crawford agreed to carry out the murders, staged as a robbery, for a price.
How much?
Reports vary slightly, but the figure often cited is around $10,000 total, maybe $5,000 per parent.
And Jennifer, she approached the planning with the same kind of detail she used for her other deceptions.
It seems so. She got a separate phone, a burner iPhone, and a specific SIM card just for communicating with Wong and Crawford about the plot, keeping it compartmentalized, secret.
There was even reconnaissance, right?
Yes, Crawford apparently drove through the Pans neighborhood on Halloween night, using the crowds of trick-or-treaters as cover to check out the house, look for access points, vulnerabilities. It shows planning, premeditation.
Okay, so let's bring it back to November 8th, 2010, the night itself. The plan goes into motion, but things start to unravel pretty quickly for the staged robbery narrative.
Almost immediately, yeah. Police were initially treating Jennifer as a victim witness, but certain things just felt off.
Like the 911 call.
And her story about being tied up. She insisted the restraints were incredibly tight, black shoelaces tied behind her back to the banister, yet somehow she accessed her cell phone, which she said was hidden in her waistband, to call 911.
That does seem physically difficult, if not impossible, if you're truly tightly bound.
Exactly. They even asked her to reenact it in a later interview, and it raised serious doubts.
And the crime scene itself didn't look like a typical robbery.
Not at all. That was maybe the biggest inconsistency. Professionals planning a robbery in a wealthy home like that, you'd expect tools, crowbars for entry, maybe zip ties for restraining people, bags to carry loot. None of that was found.
And they didn't take obvious valuables.
That's the thing. Han Pan's Lexus keys were apparently left right near the door, in plain sight. Extremely valuable, easy to take. Why would armed robbers ignore that?
It suggests the motive wasn't actually robbery.
Precisely. And then there's the most glaring question. Why kill the parents, brutally, but leave Jennifer, the only witness, completely unharmed.
Right. If it's a robbery gone wrong, you'd expect them to either flee or silence all witnesses, leaving one alive, especially the one who called the police.
It strongly suggests the target wasn't random loot, but specific people, and that Jennifer wasn't just a random witness left behind. Plus, police later got surveillance footage showing 3 people entering the house and then leaving quickly. It confirmed hired help, but didn't fit the messy robbery narrative.
But the absolute game changer, the event that blew the whole conspiracy wide open, was unexpected.
The fact that Huei Hann survived.
Against all odds, shot in the head and face, he pulls through.
It's incredible. He was in a coma for days, but eventually he woke up. And once he could communicate, his testimony completely destroyed Jennifer's story.
What did he remember? What did he tell the police?
He remembered seeing Jennifer during the invasion, and critically, he said she was not tied up. He recalled her moving freely, even speaking calmly or softly, almost friendly, with one of the intruders.
Wow. That's devastating evidence against her.
It changed everything. Instantly, she went from being the primary victim and witness to the prime suspect.
And the arrest followed soon after.
Very soon. She was brought in for a third interview on November 22nd, less than 2 weeks after the attack. This time, it wasn't as a witness. She was arrested during that interview. That third interview was a completely different scenario for Jennifer. Detective William Goetz led it, and the approach shifted dramatically. She wasn't being treated as a traumatized victim anymore.
Right, she's the suspect now. And Goetz used the read technique, which is quite controversial, isn't it?
It is. It's a specific interrogation method designed to increase a suspect's anxiety and perceived guilt while minimizing the perceived consequences of confessing. A key part of it, and the controversial part, is that it allows investigators to lie.
They can use deception, claim they have evidence they don't actually possess.
Exactly. It's sometimes called kidology. And Detective Goetz used this very effectively against Jennifer. He built this narrative that the police knew everything.
What kinds of lies did he tell her?
He made some pretty bold claims. He told her he was an expert in truth verification, that they had computer software that could analyze her voice patterns and detect lies based on rhythm and stress.
Okay, that's intimidating.
And then he went even further. He claimed they had access to infrared satellite technology, like something out of a spy movie, that could basically see through walls like an X-ray and track everyone's movements inside the house during the invasion.
So he was saying, we saw you weren't tied up.
Precisely. We have proof your story is impossible. It was designed to make her feel like denial was completely futile, that the truth was already known.
How did Jennifer react to this? Someone who had built her entire life around controlling the narrative, suddenly facing this kind of direct, technologically backed, or supposedly backed, accusation.
She crumbled. The sources describe a complete psychological collapse in the interrogation room. Extreme physical reactions, violent shaking, rocking back and forth in her chair, complaining of dizziness.
Like her defenses just shattered.
Utterly. At one point, she curled up into the fetal position. Psychologists analyzing this later described it as a severe regression, almost back to an infantile state, when her long-practiced coping mechanisms just failed under that immense pressure.
It points to some deep-seated psychological mechanisms at play, doesn't it? Beyond just simple lying.
Definitely. Analysts identify what they call primitive defense mechanisms. One is splitting.
Splitting? What does that mean?
It's this ability to compartmentalize your thoughts and feelings so radically that one part of your mind essentially doesn't know or doesn't acknowledge what the other part is doing or planning.
So she could genuinely feel innocent or shocked, even while being guilty.
That's the theory. The part of her orchestrating the horrific plan was walled off from the part playing the grieving daughter, allowing her to maintain that emotional facade almost genuinely.
And the other mechanism.
Repression. Similar, but more about actively pushing down uncomfortable truths or information so thoroughly that you essentially refuse to know it. She could then react with seemingly genuine surprise or ignorance when confronted with facts.
Like with Daniel Wong being a drug dealer, she just wouldn't accept it.
Exactly. She maintained this idealized version of him, repressing the inconvenient reality. It helped preserve her internal narrative.
So under the pressure of Goetz's interrogation and these crumbling defenses, she confessed.
She did confess to hiring the men, but almost immediately she introduced this alternative narrative, this contradictory story that became her defense at trial.
Right. This is where the motive gets really murky again. The Crown's theory was straightforward.
Premeditated murder for hire, kill both parents for freedom and money. Clear targets, clear motive.
But Jennifer's story was Different. The suicide by proxy idea.
Very different. She claimed she was actually the intended target, that she was so depressed, so ashamed, so undeserving of life after her lies were exposed, that she hired the hitmen to kill her.
She couldn't kill herself, so she outsourced it.
That was the claim. And then she added another twist. She said she'd actually called the whole thing off back in September, a couple of months before the attack, because she felt her relationship with her father was improving.
So why did the hitmen show up on November 8th?
According to her defense, they showed up unexpectedly, not to carry out the original hit, but demanding a cancellation fee, that same $10,000 figure. And the violence that ensued, the murder of her mother and the shooting of her father, was supposedly spontaneous, unplanned violence by these angry men because they felt cheated out of their fee.
That seems incredibly hard to believe. Hitmen showing up for a cancellation fee decide to commit murder and attempted murder on the spot, but leave the person who owed the fee unharmed.
It's a highly improbable scenario, and the prosecution certainly painted it as such. But it was her attempt to avoid the conviction for premeditated first-degree murder, especially regarding her mother. She consistently testified that she loved her mother and never, ever intended for her to be harmed. The defense tried hard to suggest Bich Han's death was a tragic, unintended consequence of this supposed cancellation fee dispute. So after the confession, the arrests, the case moved to the courts, and it was a massive undertaking. The trial involved the four main players: Jennifer, Daniel Wong, Linford Crawford, homeboy, and another man involved, David Milvaganam.
And it went on for a long time.
Nearly 10 months, from 2014 into 2015, one of the longest trials in recent Canadian history. Over 50 witnesses testified.
What was the key evidence for the prosecution? What really sealed the deal in that first trial?
Digital evidence was huge. Remember that secret phone Jennifer used?
The burner iPhone.
Exactly. Police recovered thousands of text messages and call logs from that phone and its SIM card. That data meticulously mapped out the conspiracy. The planning calls, the texts discussing logistics, the scouting trip on Halloween, even mentions of the payment.
So it directly contradicted her story about calling it off and the surprise visit for a cancellation fee.
Completely. It provided a clear timeline of ongoing planning right up to the event. And of course, it powerfully corroborated her father's testimony that she was actively involved and not just a victim.
Jennifer herself testified, right, for a long time.
She did, for 7 days, trying to sell that suicide by proxy gone wrong narrative, emphasizing her supposed love for her mother and lack of intent to harm her.
But the jury didn't buy it.
No. In the end, all four were found guilty. Guilty of first-degree murder for Bich Ha and guilty of attempted murder for Huei Han.
And the sentence.
Mandatory life imprisonment for the first-degree murder conviction with no chance of parole for 25 years. So eligibility wouldn't come until 2035. It seemed like a definitive end to the legal process at the time.
But the human cost, especially for Han Pan, was just immense.
Unimaginable. His victim impact statement is heartbreaking. He said, quite simply, "When I lost my wife, I lost my daughter at the same time. I don't feel like I have a family anymore."
He lost everything. His wife, his daughter's betrayal, his health.
His health was shattered. He suffered debilitating physical injuries from the shooting, leaving him unable to work, in constant pain, plus the psychological trauma, anxiety attacks, insomnia, nightmares.
And he couldn't even live in his own home anymore?
No, the trauma associated with the house was too much. He had to move out and live with relatives. His life was completely destroyed.
Did he address Jennifer directly in his statement?
He did, and it's quite poignant. Despite everything, he expressed a hope, saying, "I hope my daughter Jennifer thinks about what has happened to her family and can become a good, honest person someday."
Wow. That capacity for, not forgiveness perhaps, but a parent's enduring hope even after that level of betrayal is profound.
It really is. It adds another layer of tragedy to the whole thing.
But the legal story wasn't quite over, was it? There was a major twist on appeal.
A huge twist. The case went up through the appellate courts, eventually reaching the Supreme Court of Canada. And while they upheld the attempted murder conviction, confirming the plot against Han Pan was proven they did something stunning with the murder charge.
What happened?
They ordered a new trial specifically for the first-degree murder conviction related to Bich Ha.
A completely new trial. Why? What was the legal issue?
It came down to the instructions the original trial judge gave to the jury. The judge essentially told the jury they had only 2 options to consider for Bich Han's death. Either it was planned, premeditated first-degree murder as part of the plot to kill both parents, or it was a home invasion gone wrong where no murder was intended, which would likely mean acquittal on the murder charge.
Okay, so guilty of the full-planned murder or Basically, not guilty of murder at all in that context.
Right. And the defense argued, successfully on appeal, that this was an error. The judge should have instructed the jury on other possibilities specifically, second-degree murder or manslaughter.
What's the difference, legally speaking? Why did that matter?
First-degree murder requires proof of planning and deliberation, a specific, thought-out intent to kill that person. Second-degree murder still involves intent to kill, but without the same level of planning, maybe more spontaneous. Manslaughter involves causing a death unlawfully, but without the intent to kill, perhaps during the commission of another dangerous act, like the alleged confrontation over the cancellation fee.
So, by not giving the jury those options, the judge removed the possibility that maybe the plan was only to kill the father and the mother's death happened in the chaos, possibly intentionally but without premeditation, second degree, or even unintentionally during the assault, manslaughter.
Exactly. The appeal courts, including the Supreme Court, found that even if improbable, Jennifer's story about loving her mother and the hip being called off, combined with some evidence of earlier plots targeting only the father, meant there was an air of reality to these lesser possibilities. The jury should have been allowed to consider them.
They were forced into an all-or-nothing decision on the most serious charge.
That was the finding. The judge essentially took away the jury's ability to potentially find a middle ground based on the evidence and testimony presented, particularly Jennifer's own testimony about her intent regarding her mother.
So what's the situation now? The attempted murder conviction stands.
Yes, that's firm. The legal system agrees there was a conspiracy to kill Han Pan, and Jennifer was part of it. Her life sentence for that remains.
But the conviction for her mother's murder is overturned, pending a new trial.
Correct. She, Wong, and the others now potentially face a second trial specifically on the charge related to Bich Pan's death. And in that trial, the jury would likely be instructed on the options of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and manslaughter.
This creates a state of perpetual uncertainty, doesn't it?
It really does. We know she conspired against her father. But the precise legal culpability for her mother's death is now back in question, at least formally. Regardless of what happens in a potential new trial or if one even proceeds, that specific question might always linger. And Jennifer, meanwhile, continues to maintain her innocence regarding any intent to kill her mother. So, looking at the whole arc, the Jennifer Pan story is just a chilling case study, isn't it? It shows how this potent mix of intense family pressure, cultural expectations, and years of building these elaborate psychological defenses against failure can just curdle into something truly horrific.
The journey from faking grades to faking a whole life and then to arranging murder. It's a terrifying progression. The fear of shame, the fear of not meeting expectations, it drove everything.
It really seems to have been the core engine, and the deception became a necessary tool until even that wasn't enough, and the only perceived escape route involved ultimate violence.
And yet, the most haunting thing, the part that's hard to reconcile, comes from Jennifer herself. She said on the stand, "I needed my family to be around me. I wanted them to accept me. I didn't want to live alone. I didn't want them to abandon me either."
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? This stated deep need for parental acceptance, existing side by side with a plan that ensures their permanent absence.
How do you square that circle, the desire for connection and the act of elimination?
It speaks to that profound psychological fracture. Maybe, in her mind, the parents she needed acceptance from were inseparable from the tyrannical expectations they imposed. Perhaps the only way she could conceive of escaping the crushing weight of who she was supposed to be was by destroying the source of that expectation entirely.
So maybe it wasn't about escaping them as people, but escaping the unbearable pressure they represented.
That's one way to interpret the psychological landscape, certainly. It leads us to that final unsettling thought for you, our listeners, to ponder. We have the legal fact of her conspiracy against her father. We have her own words about needing her parents' acceptance. How do we reconcile that profound need with the horrifying finality of the plan she set in motion? Could it be that in situations of such extreme, unbearable psychological pressure, the ultimate twisted goal isn't necessarily freedom in the conventional sense, but rather the complete destruction of the impossible expectation itself, the annihilation of the tiger?